you just have a couple. You can't just have a couple, Adam?
Nah, I'm bad at it. If I'm out, I'm bad at it.
So you're good at just abstaining altogether, but the moment that cold brew taste touches your lips.
Not even that. It's if I'm out. Like if I'm out having fun somewhere, I just won't leave.
Yeah, I got you. Yo, good evening. It's late for me. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com MLB Live Before Lock. This is the first MLB Live Before Lock I'm doing this season, so buckle up, my friends. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D, but we got Adam Scherer here to right the ship at Ship My Money DFS, hanging out over the next hour. We got all 12 games up on the side of the screen, in the sidebar there. Make your life a little bit easier. We'll go game by game. I asked the fellas. I said, I hadn't done a lot of Live Before Locks. It's deeper dive strategy show for me. They agreed. Let's go game by game here. Hit on all the important stuff, and we should have plenty of time. I don't know, man. 12 games for MLB takes way less time than 12 games for the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much less to dive into in terms of like they tell you who's hitting. So it's just talking about, the matchup. It's not, well, they could actually have this guy hit third and he hit five times. Like,
right. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe this guy with the platoon advantage might get pinch hit for in the seventh, but who cares? Yeah. If you had asked me to do 12 NFL games in an hour, I would tell you I'm just not doing the show.
Oh, see, I could do 12 NFL games in an hour because I don't know shit about the NFL, so I don't have anything to say anyway.
That's like fair.
It just purely when you've seen my NFL shows, when I do NFL, it is purely like
analytical,
DFS,
data driven.
Yeah, data driven, DFS based. Like I can get through it pretty quick.
That is true because like you still give good analysis with NFL, but it's way different than what you do with baseball and NBA, where you're actively participating and watching those games and paying attention to every player every week. Every day.
Like, yeah, NFL, it's more, hey, this guy's good. And this is his ownership, his projection, and I'm playing him.
Yep. Happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into it. We got 12 games to get through. We'll touch on all 12 of them game by game, like I said. Kick it off with Detroit and Washington. All right, so 7:05 first pitch in this one. Let me pull this up real quick. There we are. All right. Yeah, Detroit 115 money line favorite, so it's close. 8.5 run total, I should say. Matthew Boyd, southpaw on the mound for Detroit today. Jake Irvin, righty on the bump for Washington. All right, so let's dive straight into this. We'll always start with the pitchers here, and then we can work our way over. And oftentimes, if the pitchers are getting zero love, it's likely that you're going to get some interest in these hitters. But with Matthew Boyd, top pitchers tool grades him out pretty negatively. Semi-positive leverage score. He's never been the flashiest lefty in the league. But on the other side of that one, I guess we can touch on both sides here if you want. Where do you want to start here with Boyd? Let's just start with Boyd, actually.
Yeah. So he's I guess just from the jump, pitching on this slate sucks. There's a lot of it, but it sucks. So just keep in mind as we go through these games that like almost every pitcher we talk about, even ones that we're playing, there's going to be a lot of negative things said about them as well. So keeping that in mind, like Matthew Boyd is a reasonable SP2. He's got one of the better matchups on the slate facing the Nats. The problem is just that he's not very good anymore. He used to be really good, and then it disappeared. So far this year, striking out 19% of righties, 188 expected ISO, 22% strikeout percentage to lefties, sub 100 expected ISO. The Nats lineup is about as weak as major league lineups get. There's a couple that are worse, but it's a pretty good spot. 4.2 to 4.3 implied run total. He's getting a little bit of ownership, nothing too crazy. So I am interested in him, but I don't feel good about him. But that's going to be the case for a lot. We have him projected for like 5% ownership right now. I think he should be around like, I don't know, 7-8% owned. So, not too under owned, but just one of many cheap arms that it's just like, yeah, whatever, this guy could be okay. I'm not confident in a lot on the slate. So I see it that way. I don't really have any interest in Irvin. I think that he's a step behind Boyd. He does still have a good matchup, but between the two pitchers, I think I get the Boyd first. Overall, though, this game is really interesting in that a lot of times we talk about games where there's not a lot of ownership coming into it because you have two good pitchers and two good offenses. And so the median projection sort of just like buries everybody. This game's sort of the opposite. you have two not very good pitchers and two not very good offenses and very little ownership because nobody wants to go to Boyd or Irvin or the Tigers or the Nats, which I completely get. But when all four sides of a game are this cheap and this low owned, it becomes really interesting to me in tournaments just as a whole, because more like most of the time, you're going to get some form of good value from this game, whether it is Matthew Boyd pitches well at 7,100 or the Nats have a good game and they're cheap across the board, or the Tigers light up Irvin or Irvin pitches well. I don't know. Like, obviously there's a lot of volatility there, but as a whole, this game is interesting to me just because of the lack of ownership and how cheap every part of it is.
Just looking on the Detroit side for a second here before we move on. What do you make of this Detroit stack today? Just looking at Irving, out of the gate, very small sample, right? We have 15 major innings pitched at the major league level, so it's not a lot to work with. 22% K rate, but what stands out? He has a 5% swinging strike rate, so it's not exactly like he's missing any bats. If they're going to be putting balls in play, and as you pointed out, they are as low on the stack as we're seeing right now, is that something that would just make him more interesting?
Yeah, and the lack of ownership. One thing on this slate is that hitter value isn't as important because you just don't have pitching that you have to pay up for. But they're getting 3% aggregate ownership. The Tigers are. If you sort by stack score in our top stacks tool, so you're getting the metric that combines top stack percentage and top value percentage, the Tigers are coming in sixth. 4.5% chance of being the top stack. Obviously, that's low, but with 24 teams playing today, most teams are going to be in that range. 2.5% to 3% aggregate ownership. They are going a little bit under owned, even just compared to top stack percentage. And then you factor in the value component, and they're going even more under owned. Same can be said for the Nats. 3% chance of being the top stack, 3% ownership. They are like 10th, 11th in stack score. So they are coming in behind Detroit, but from a value standpoint and an ownership standpoint, both of these offenses are somewhat interesting. Individually from the Tigers, Riley Green probably looks the best. He is actually $4,900 though, so it's kind of tough to get there. Torkelson at 3,300, the dude sucks, but does have power supposedly. And he's only 3,300. So like, I'm not going to feel good about either stack, and I'm not going to complain if I don't get to either one, but the game just sort of interests me in that both stacks are like 3% owned. Both pitchers are like 5% owned. And nobody's expensive.
Let's talk about Chicago Cubs and Philadelphia. Right now, man, looking at the top pitchers tool, which by the way, you guys know this, 50% off all of our tools, any week, month, whatever you want, or the brand new illustrious lineup generator that you're getting for less than $4.50 for your first week. You can set any stack type, you can lock players in, you can swap players out. We're already giving you the best lineups that we've run, and then you can decide which ones you want to keep. Upload them to CSV. It's optimized for mobile. I could go on for days about all the features on this, but more than anything, you can see the optimal rate for every lineup. You can see the ownership projection for every lineup, how chalky it is, how contrarian it is. All of that stuff is huge. And you know what? If you don't like it, at the end of the day, you're out $4.48. You got to test drive it for a week, but you've been struggling with MLB. If it's not working, as Josh and I mentioned this morning, it's going to give you better lineups on the whole than you're likely going to be making by hand. And that's no insult. It's just the way to be competitive nowadays. You can win hand building, but it's certainly not like it used to be at all. I think anybody can attest to that. Adam's shaking his head. Yes. It's
just everything's more difficult. It's not that you can't win hand building, but it's very difficult. Even as like an experienced player, it's very difficult to find that balance between highly projected lineups and lineups that are at least in some way contrarian. And the lineup generator just does it for you very quickly, saves you a lot of time. And it's going to just give you lineups that, over time you expect to be positive value. So it's going to, not only is it easier, like not only does it save you time, it's just going to give you better lineups. And you have the custom ability where like, it's not like you are forced to just play stuff that you don't like. If let's say you just listen to me talk about the Tigers and you're like, I definitely don't want to play the Tigers. And then you go into the lineup generator and it spits out a Tiger stack because it's a plus EV stack. You can still just skip it. And like you still have some level of customization. You can change any player in there as well. So you still have control over it. At the very least, it's just giving you the template for a good lineup. And, you can change it around if you want.
For sure. 448 for the first week. Link in the description and chat if you want to check the lineup generator out. If you want all the other tools, You'll see it down there, 50% off any package. That'll get you that as well. Marcus Stroman, what a fascinating pitcher to talk about right now, because we have him with the highest leverage score on the slate at 8.4%, 1% owned, around 10% top two probability, which normally, as you mentioned, like on a normal slate with 12 games wouldn't be that high at all. But there's such flat distribution of how these guys are grading out today as far as being a top two pitcher. What do you make of somebody like Marcus Stroman today against the Philly team that, yes, they have Bryce Harper back in the lineup, you know, lefty righty matchup for Harper, certainly beneficial, but there are still a pretty significant amount of strikeouts that you could find in this lineup too. Do you have any interest in a 1% Stroman today?
I'm interested because of the ownership. I still don't think I'm going to get to a lot. Like in the stuff I have running right now, he's showing up, 5 to 6% of the time for me.
Okay.
It's definitely not a spot though, where like, if you're building lineups and you're getting to Stroman, I wouldn't have an issue with it. Like, I don't really like the matchup. I don't like the park. You do still have like a 4.8 implied run total for the Phillies. It's a very, very risky spot. And for that reason, Stroman is going to project behind a lot of other pitchers, and he's $8,800. So it's not like you're getting a favorable price tag, but it does go back to, you have a lot of pitchers on this slate getting double digit ownership simply because they are the best of a lot of not very good options. And whenever you get slates like that, I'm more inclined to be like, if I'm getting to this 1% owned pitcher that I don't really like, but that I know is just as talented as the pitchers everybody's playing, I'm not going to worry about it. So I don't think I'm going to get to much, but if you are getting to some, I wouldn't worry about it. Like, he's, in terms of talent, just as good as almost any pitcher on tonight's slate. His strikeout stuff's been a little bit better this year as well. So for me, it's the matchup and the park that still scares me away. But from a talent standpoint, you can't tell me that Anthony Desclafani is a lot better than Marcus Stroman, or Blake Snell is a lot better than Marcus Stroman, or, a lot of the Martin Perez is getting ownership for $1,100 less. Like, you can tell me they have better matchups, but you can't tell me they're more talented. And so the ownership gap is bigger than it should be. But that being said, still probably not going to get that much. And
also, he's an extreme ground ball pitcher as well. Right. He gave up 3 home runs in one game earlier this season. Aside from that, he has 1 home run allowed. So he
also, so far this year against righties, has a 29% strikeout percentage. Now, you have a Phillies lineup that it has 5 righties, 4 lefties, but the top skews lefty. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it'll continue or not. Obviously, for most of his career, he hasn't been a great strikeout guy, but so far this year, he's not striking out lefties very often, but he's striking out righties a ton.
Any interest in Ranger Suarez?
Yeah, because of the price tag. He threw 72 pitches in his first start of the year. He had missed, I think, 6 weeks with an elbow injury, but he threw 72 pitches. So he's reasonably stretched out. He's only $6,300. One strategy that I do tend to use a lot on slates like this, where you have a bunch of, like 8 to 9K pitching that is fine, but risky, is not being afraid to just save some money and go to somebody like Suarez, who probably doesn't have the highest ceiling. I doubt that he's suddenly going to go out there and throw 95 pitches or anything in this start, but he's just as good as most in terms of talent, as most of the other pitchers on this slate. Since last year, about a 20% strikeout percentage to righties, 18% to lefties, only a 134 expected ISO to righties, sub 100 to lefties. He's just a solid pitcher. I assume he's throwing something like 85 pitches here at 6,300. I'm probably not going to get crazy amounts of him, but he does project as a pretty decent value. And he's only getting 2% ownership. He's showing up around like 8% for me in the crunch I'm running. Again, I'm not saying if the slate started right now, I would have 8%. I'm saying I think he should be about 8% owned.
Yeah, and Ranger Suarez, he's a fine pitcher. I mean, he's fine. The bats in this one, though, I don't know. Like, Stroman's never been flashy, but he's also never someone that gives up a ton of home runs, keeps the ball on the ground. It's going to be mid-60s in Philly tonight. Nothing crazy at Citizens Bank Park. And then on the other side, the Cubs have the 3rd highest weighted on base average against lefties this season. They're top 4 in WRC plus. They're 193 ISO, ranks top 5 in the league. Do you have any interest in getting the bats on either side?
I wouldn't mind if I did, but the pricing makes it kind of tough. The Phillies are really expensive, and it's not like it's a great matchup against Stroman. It is a spot where the implied run total here makes me more interested than I guess I normally would be. Like if you just tell me Marcus Stroman's facing the Phillies, I'm probably just going to be like, yeah, okay, I'm good all around. But the fact that the Phillies have a 4.8 implied run total, it's just a little bit higher than I expected. But it just becomes a tough team to stack. You know, Bryson Stott's leading off at 4,500. Then you have Turner at 53, Harper at 62, Castellanos at 47, Schwarber 5K flat on DraftKings, Real Muto 5,100. Bohm, Marsh, Sosa, bottom of the order, all sub 4K. But it's a tough team in terms of salary. So looking at the top stacks tool, they are third from the bottom in stack score because of how expensive they are. They have about a 3.5 to 4% chance of being the top stack, 2.5 to 3% ownership. So they're going a little bit under owned, but all things considered, I think it's going to be pretty tough for me to get to them. Chicago is a little bit cheaper, but 4% ownership, 3.5% chance of being the top stack, middle of the road in stack score. This game to me is sort of the opposite of that Tigers Nats game. There's a lot of names between Phillies bats, Cubs bats, Stroman, Suarez. There's a lot of guys that I'm just like, yeah, they're good. Like I'd be happy to play them. But for the most part, Suarez excluded, the salaries make it really difficult.
Yeah, they do. And let's talk about like someone in Kyle Gibson too against Toronto. 7,300 isn't exactly cheap for a guy in Kyle Gibson who's striking out 16% of batters this season. You know, it's not. Oh, by the way, Kyle Gibson's a guy that I thought could have had elite strikeout stuff with his breaking stuff and just never figured it out with the fastball location. And remember, every team he was at, Minnesota, like when he throws this, he gets swings and misses every time, and then just never really figured it out.
Yeah, I was sort of hopeful that we'd see the strikeout stuff increase coming to Baltimore because that's a team that, you know, analytically is very, very
gone down even further.
Yeah. This spot for Gibson terrifies me. I said it on the show this morning with Neil. I'm not one to typically just blindly recommend bets. And I'm not saying you should listen to me. But the 9.5 total in this game strikes me as low, just given how much I like the way these two teams match up with the respective pitchers. Gibson this year has been serviceable for Baltimore. His biggest, trait or biggest plus is that he can go deep into games. But so far this year, he has allowed a 108 actual ISO and a 262 actual WOBA to right-handed hitters. So you look at that and you're like, all right, that's good. It makes up for the 17.5% strikeout percentage.
What's the expected?
His expected ISO to righties this year is 224. His expected WOBA is 345. And keep in mind, Kyle Gibson pitches his home games in Baltimore, where you have a 20-foot wall, like 370 feet away from home plate in left field. So it makes sense for him to, quote unquote, run good against right-handed hitters because they can just hit it 350 feet and it's going to get caught. Now you're in the Rogers Center with almost nothing but right-handed power in this lineup, and you don't have that wall in left field. So, obviously it's still baseball. Hitting's still really hard. There's still a good chance Gibson has a solid game, but this sets up as a spot where Gibson should run into the regression that he's due all at once, basically, against Toronto. Really, really scary spot to get to him. I'm not really interested in doing it. I am interested in the Jays. I ran a bunch of lineups earlier. Wasn't getting to much Toronto, which I hate because I do, again, just really like the offensive environment in this game, but they are one of the best stacks, 5.2 implied run total. We have them 6th, 7th in stack score because they're relatively expensive. But in terms of top stack percentage, they're 3rd at 6%, 7% aggregate ownership. And it's not like you need to shy away from guys like Dalton Varsho either, just because they're left-handed. They're still fine. But the numbers against righties are what really stand out because of Gibson pitching his home games in Camden Yards.
What about Baltimore against Kikuchi today? They've got 7 righties. Well, 5 righties, 2 switch hitting bats out there. Basically 2 lefties bookending this lineup, not including Ortiz batting 9th. What do you think of this matchup for either side?
Yeah, I like it from the Orioles side too. Kikuchi is getting some ownership, and I think that's reasonable. He's a good enough strikeout pitcher, but very boomer bust. He's like a poor man's Andrew Heaney, where he's striking you out around 22 to 24% of the time typically, but he also is giving up a lot of power. So far this year,
he's given up 11 home runs in 8 starts.
Yeah. So far this year, he has a 23% strikeout percentage. That's good. 4.5% walk percentage. That's good. Still has a 5.46 FIP. He's given up 2.38 home runs per 9. His xFIP is 4.1, but the thing you have to keep in mind there is xFIP is using a normalized home run per fly ball rate. If you are giving up hard hit fly balls consistently, you're going to underperform your xFIP because it's just assuming that 10% of your fly balls or 12% of your fly balls, whatever the number is, should be home runs. If you're giving up blasted fly balls, you can maintain a higher home run to fly ball percentage, and that's what the FIP is showing you. So, the truth probably somewhere in the middle, but this is somebody that has had home run issues for a long time. So far this year, 238 expected ISO to righties, 261 to lefties. It's not like he's getting, unlucky on with these power numbers. Going back to last year, 230 to righties, 199 to lefties. You have plenty of power in this Orioles lineup. Mullins lefty isn't ideal, but it's not like Kikuchi's great against lefties anyway. Rutschman, Mountcastle, Santander, Hayes all have power, all hitting from the right side. McKenna's hitting 6th at 2K. Not a ton of power. He has been hitting better so far this year over a limited sample, but doesn't project as a good major league hitter, but he's still dirt cheap. Jorge Mateo has been god-awful after a good start to the season. He is banged up. He's 5,200. It's tough to pay that price, but he does still have power and stolen base upside. Adam Frazier's lefty, and then you have Joey Ortiz at the bottom of the order, tearing up AAA as well. Top 100 prospect in baseball, batting 9th at sub 3K with second base and shortstop eligibility. There's a ton of upside in this Orioles lineup, and it is good for the right-handed bats to get out of Camden Yards, get into the Rogers Center. 4.3 implied run total isn't anything special, but kind of the way I was talking about it with Neil this morning is that if you just played this slate out 10,000 times, the games where the Orioles do well are likely to just be tournament winning games because of the amount of power they have going up against a good pitcher in Kikuchi. So I'm not saying I think the Blue Jays are certainly more likely to succeed than the Orioles are, but the 4.3 implied run total on the O's, I think, is a little bit deceiving because so much of their production in this matchup, if they do produce, is likely to come via home run.
All right. Well said, sir. Yeah, and Orioles are 8th in ISO versus lefties. So, or like you said, the power is absolutely there.
Yeah.
Cleveland and New York Mets. Do we even have to talk about Cal Quantrill? I'm being serious in terms of, do we? I don't think we need to waste a ton of breath on that.
No, all I would say about Quantrill is if you're playing 150 lineups and he ends up somewhere because he's 1% owned, sure, whatever. He can give you 6 innings and pitch well, but
you're not seeking him out.
No, it's not anybody I'm expecting to pitch well.
You know what his K rate is this year?
14%.
11.
That is worse than I thought.
His called plus swinging strike is sub 20, which is just remarkably bad. Even for a guy that doesn't get a ton of swings and misses, he's getting nothing. Not good. I actually want to cover both sides of this, and then we'll get to the pitching side for the Mets. But do you like Mets bats today against Quantrill, or is this just a spot where you're probably not doing a ton of either?
I think it's a middle of the road spot. Quantrill's not terrible at limiting production. He is terrible at getting strikeouts, like you were saying, but so far this year, a 151 expected ISO to lefties. It is 217 to righties, but if you go back to last year, 160 to righties, 171 to lefties. Teams can get to him. He's not elite at preventing damage, but he's not as bad as you would expect given his lack of strikeout stuff. I do like the combination of good hitters and value in the Mets lineup, though. It sets up really nicely because you have Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso. They're all relatively expensive. Obviously, you're happy to get to those guys. But you also have Jeff McNeil hitting 3rd, second base outfield eligible at $3,600 on DraftKings. Brett Beatty, who is, I believe, the 10th ranked prospect in baseball, one of the best hitting prospects. Third base, 3,100. Starling Marte is only 4,100. You get at the bottom of the order, Francisco Alvarez, 2,800 as a catcher that does actually have some hitting upside. So I really like the balance you get from the Mets in terms of upside and also being relatively inexpensive. They're coming in with a 4.5% top stack percentage, which for anybody looking at the top stacks tool or not looking at top stacks tool, you have Houston at the top at 10%, Texas at 8%, Toronto at 6%, Dodgers at 5.5%. And then you have 10 to 15 teams between 3 and 5%. So they're very, very similar to most of the slate. They're getting 4.5% ownership. They're just a middle of the road stack here, but I do like the way their lineup sets up in terms of giving you some value that is also good in McNeil and Beatty.
I got a stuck sneeze right now.
It sucks.
It's the worst. Trying to stare into the light, get a reaction. It's not working. It'll happen soon enough. Carlos Carrasco facing Cleveland for the first time. Spent 12 seasons with Cleveland.
Was it really that long in the majors?
That's what I was wondering, because I read earlier that it was 12 seasons, but I was just, as I said that to you, I'm thinking that seems like a lot. You remember there was a time where Carlos Carrasco from a fantasy, it was a great pitcher.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and he's been in the majors since 2009.
Yeah. Did he have cancer? Was it Carrasco? Yeah, it was, right?
Yep.
Yeah, 2009. That's amazing.
Yeah, wow. Like, I mean, I was like, I knew he'd been there forever, but like, I didn't really realize it was that long.
Long time, man. Yeah, 2009 to 2020 he spent with Cleveland. Long time. How many pitches do you think he throws today? He threw 52 in his last tune-up. What do you give him, like 75?
Yeah, I'll say 75 feels like the right guess. And at 8,200, it just makes it tough for me to want to get there. It's not like there's already volatility because you don't really know what Carlos Carrasco is at this point. Coming back from cancer, having the injuries that he's had, during the later part of his career, it's tough to be really confident what he even is. And then you also have the assumption that he's probably not going to be allowed to go super deep into this game. So it makes it pretty difficult to roster.
Any bats for Cleveland?
I don't really think so. If you wanted, I think the best case you could make for Cleveland would be, we don't know what Carlos Carrasco is. Maybe he just comes back from his rehab assignment and he's flat. He doesn't have it. And that's great for the entire Cleveland lineup, but probably not going to really be getting to them. If that happens, I'll just be annoyed that I said it and didn't do anything.
69 thumbs up. Josh were on this show. He'd ask me not to ask for thumbs up because of his sick infatuation with this number. If you haven't yet, please take a single second to atone for your sins here. It's late in the day, but you'll sleep better knowing that you took a second and hit that thumbs up, showed us a little bit of love. Let's at least get it over 100 here. Not going to lie. I know baseball shows don't pull the same numbers as NBA, but the ratio's not that bad here. Almost 400. If we were to get to 100 likes with 380 watching, you're talking about a pretty solid ratio right there, north of 25%. And we could all go home pretty proud of that. So take a second, show us some love. All right. Where are we going here? Seattle and Atlanta. Talk about the Seattle Mariners. Some of these games I'm just going to toss over to you to make sure that we're pacing this. Okay. But with this one, Bryce Elder, what do you want to do? Like I said, I'll try and save some time here. Seattle's plus 130 on the money line, 8.5 run total here.
There are two pitchers on this slate that I'm having difficulty getting to. The field is not playing, and I'm going to be really pissed off when they pitch well. Bryce Miller is one of them. He is in a tough spot against Atlanta. He's also expensive on DraftKings at 9,400. He's also one of the most talented pitchers on this slate. Obviously, he's not proven. He's got 3 major league starts under his belt. One was against Oakland. One was against Detroit. So you could kind of argue he has 1 major league start under his belt. That was against Houston. He pitched well in that one too. So I'm not getting to him. But if you wanted to just play this guy is one of the most talented pitchers on the slate, and he's like 1% owned, that's fine. I'm not getting there. Elder at 9,200, 3.9 implied run total for the Mariners. Elder does project a bit better. He's getting more ownership, 20% ownership, 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. I am getting to a bit more of him. Again, like in my head, I feel like the gap should not be as big between Elder and Miller, given that they are similarly priced. Miller has the better strikeout stuff, but data's not really backing that up. So I'm not going to end up getting there, and it'll just be frustrating when Miller pitches well.
Fair enough. Just looking at the top stack tool here. Where do we have Seattle and Atlanta as far as stacks go?
Probably both between 3 and 5%.
Seattle
3.5%, Atlanta 4.5%.
Okay. All right.
8% aggregate ownership coming into Atlanta. That was a bit deceiving this morning. I'm double checking it now. Yeah, same thing. Ronald Acuna is pulling 18%. Sean Murphy's the next highest owned guy on DraftKings at 8. So don't be scared to go to Atlanta because like the top stacks tool says they're over-owned. That is just basically Ronald Acuna pulling up the aggregate. The ownership is pretty much where it should be on this team. High upside spot. Bryce Miller is making his 4th major league start. He's not most likely not going to just mow down major league hitters from start 1 and never look back. There are going to be some hiccups. It is a high upside Braves offense. So another just, sort of middle of the pack stack. Happy to get there if I can, because they do have a lot of talent. They are also pretty expensive.
All right. Carl Kaufman, Martin Perez, Rockies plus 190 money line on the road, 9.5 run total for this one. I think, like I said, some of these we could probably expedite the process. Carl Kaufman, do we really need to talk at length about him? He is our, right now, let's see. Yeah, lowest owned pitcher on the slate, top 2%, top 2 likelihood. Yeah, probability that he's a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings is the lowest of any pitcher on the slate. Texas Rangers right now have the top stack probability, second highest. Of course, that's kind of flat too. They're at 8% behind only the Houston Astros, who've got a very juicy matchup that we'll talk about in a second. Let's cover this game from both sides here. From Colorado, Texas. We can talk about Perez if you want, but also these Texas bats that look real good today.
Yeah, Texas bats look really good. The only concern, I guess, if you want to call it that, is that, we've talked about it a lot. Like I always get a little hesitant taking teams against the guy making their major league debut, just because it can be a little bit difficult. Like they've never seen him before unless they happen to run into him in the minors in the last couple of years. And major league hitters are just so reliant on scouting reports, video, all of that. They're still getting their scouting reports. They still, know what he throws, but it can just be a little bit different. But he has nothing that makes me think this guy's going to be a good major league pitcher. He's nearly 26 years old. He's not in Colorado's top 30 prospects, according to MLB Pipeline. He doesn't strike guys out. His ground ball percentage last year at AAA was pretty good at 51%. This year, it's only like 40%. Every projection system has him being absolute garbage. The bat has a 6.02 FIP with a 14% strikeout percentage. Steamer's got a 5.53 FIP for this guy. Texas has been a very good offense, and they now have Corey Seager back as well. There's nothing really to dislike here other than, it's baseball and the hitting's still really hard. But Texas looks like one of the best stacks. Kaufman, I have projected as the lowest scoring pitcher by 3 full points. So
dude, those AAA numbers are brutal.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind he pitches on the moon in AAA, but
yeah, I know it. I know these guys aren't exactly pitching quality conditions, but you could be pitching in the moon, and I'd still go, "Hey, that's pretty rough, dude."
Right, and that's why I mentioned the projections too. Like sometimes you'll get somebody coming up for Colorado, or these teams that have AAA teams in the PCL or whatever they're calling it now. And you look at their numbers and it's just like, wow, this guy's bad. But then like projections are like, 4.2 FIP, 25% K rate. And it's like, oh, well, it's because he was pitching on tops of mountains every time he pitched. But that's not the case with this guy.
No, not even remotely close. So yeah, there's no reason that this wouldn't look like a good spot. You bring up a good point. Sure. The fact that they haven't seen him before could make a difference. We had this conversation a few days ago. I forget what it was when you and I were on a show, and we talked about something similar. Dude still got tuned up, but I think the Braves were facing him. I can't remember who it was, but anyway, Martin Perez, I mean, he's got a 16% strikeout rate on the season. He's given up 1.7 home runs per 9. What do you make of the Rockies bats today on the other side of this one?
Martin Perez pulling 13% ownership is all you need to know about the pitching on this slate.
Yeah, seriously. I honestly thought I was missing something, and I was going to ask you about it. All right, what am I missing here?
No, he's one of these guys where like I'm going to get to more of him than like Bryce Miller, and it just feels absolutely awful. But he's $7,700. He's facing a terrible Rockies team that has a 3.7 implied run total. He's just going to project well, but you can only feel so confident, clicking on a guy that so far this year has a 16% strikeout percentage and a 5.28 FIP, allowing 1.7 home runs per 9 innings. So again, he projects well, but there's just going to be a lot of volatility in pitching today. On the Rocky side, it's still tough to get to them. If you get to some Chris Bryant, Diaz, Grichuk, I think that's all fine, but they're also, Diaz is a catcher, but he's 4,600, so that's not great. Bryant and Grichuk being outfielders makes it tough to call them any sort of a priority since you just can get so many good outfield plays. So yeah, it's a spot where I'm probably just going to suck it up, play some Martin Perez. And similarly to how I hate myself when Miller pitches well, I'm going to hate myself when Perez gets lit up because he's Martin Perez.
Anything else on this game?
No.
What's really impressive about this slate? It's not just that there's bad pitching, but usually you can find some bad pitching where you go, all right, the guy's walking 19 batters per, he's got a 37% walk rate, but he's striking guys out at 30% too. Maybe he just has one of those games where they chase him out of the zone and he has, and he only goes 5 innings, but he ends up striking out 8 or 9. On this slate, we're looking at a bunch of players who simply do not miss bats. Like it's not, there's there's no real upside to a lot of these pitchers. We move on to Kansas City and the Chicago White Sox. Let's take another look at one of these guys, Zach Greinke. I don't know what to tell you. It's a 16% strikeout rate. And Zach Greinke's been in the league for 2007. There was a time where Zach Greinke was a fantastic pitcher, but man, I don't know what to make of this any longer.
Yeah, I mean, likely Hall of Famer.
What?
Likely Hall of Famer.
Oh, he was great, man. He was great, but he's been in the league forever. And actually, wait, 2004. 7.7% swinging strike rate on the season. 16% strikeout rate. There's not a lot of silver lining here when you're looking at Zach Greinke, and he has a 340 plus expected WOBA against lefties and righties. I don't know. Is there anything else here that I should be looking at that I'm missing to convince us to play Zach Greinke today?
No, he's barely showing up for me even at $5,600.
Okay. That's easy enough.
Yeah.
What about the other side with Kopech?
Kopech's been bad this year too. There is at least, I don't know, the fact that not too long ago he was a highly regarded prospect. He's striking out lefties at a good clip this year. Overall, 21% K percentage. But the problem is he's walking 14.5% of hitters. He has a 7.31 FIP. He's allowing 2.6 home runs per 9 innings.
Jeez.
Like, unbelievable how bad he's been. And it's not a great spot. So I think with Kopech, he's another one where, like, when you compare his ownership to some other pitchers around him, he's not getting enough. Like, for example, Yusei Kikuchi, $8,100, 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 13% ownership. Kopech, 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher at $700 less, 7% ownership. You would take Kopech versus Kikuchi if you're getting 2-to-1 odds every single time, but you're still not going to be confident at all in Kopech. And you look at the Kansas City lineup, and they're running out about as good a lineup as they can. Bobby Witt at the top, obviously a tough out. Vinny Pasquantino is down to $3,600. I mentioned that Kopech's been good at striking lefties out this year at a 27% clip. He's also allowed a 273 actual ISO and a 315 expected ISO, 426 expected WOBA, 2 left-handed hitters. If they put the ball in play, they're destroying Kopech. So Pasquantino is one of my favorite just like value plays at 3,600. MJ Melendez has struggled as a hitter this year to the point where they've told him he's no longer catching because they want him to work on hitting. But he's a $3,300 cleanup hitter with power from the left side. Nick Prado is hitting 6th at $3,100 with multi-position eligibility. Those 3 left-handed bats are really cheap and all have power. Then you have Witt and Perez from the right side, who are just 2 of the, Witt's always one of the best shortstop options. Perez is always one of the best catcher options. And Kopech's not been great against righties either. 265 expected ISO, 398 expected WOBA, only about a 17% strikeout percentage. I actually like getting to KC quite a bit.
He has 2 separate games and only 8 starts where he's allowed 4+ home runs.
Yeah, that's not great.
5 home runs against San Francisco, 4 home runs against Cincinnati at Great American. Of course, that ballpark is unforgiving for pitchers, particularly if it's warm. But yeah, I mean, if you're coughing up that, what's his fly ball rate this year? Almost 50%. And
is that including infield?
No, infield fly ball is 10%. No. He has a 49% fly ball rate and a 21% home run to fly ball rate.
Yes, I mean, like, you assume that's going to come down.
No, it has to. It has
at least,
to.
Yeah, like, it has to come down somewhat. But that goes back to what we were just saying. Like, it used to be that you just say, well, every pitcher is going to eventually, stabilize at like 11, 12%. But now we have, more advanced data where you can say, wait, like, this guy just gives up hard hit fly balls. Why would we assume that he's going to have the same home run to fly ball rate? So it doesn't have to come down that far. Like, it's going to come down. But, like I was just saying, the expected numbers on him are still awful.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I'm not arguing. I'm just saying that 21% home run to fly. If you go, put it this way, if that doesn't come down, he won't be in the rotation.
Yeah, that's true. And like, also that coming down could just turn into balls hitting the middle of the wall for doubles. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that they start becoming flyouts.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, hard hit ball. My God, dude, everything's getting pummeled.
Yeah, I just pulled up his FanGraphs page.
That's what I was on.
Yeah. So the 10% the infield fly ball rate is counted in the fly ball percentage.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. So like line drive percentage, ground ball percentage, fly ball percentage equal 100. So like
right. So infield would have to be included.
right. So like 40% though, it's still, are not infield fly balls. And like you said, almost 38% hard hit percentage and a 44.5% medium percentage. So it's not like he's just running a little bit bad and some of these what will end up being medium hard hit balls are being hard hit. He's just not getting soft contact.
Crazy. I think we covered this one, but it definitely sounds like Kansas City is one of those spots where if Kopech continues to struggle, definitely difficult not to feel decent about them for sure.
Yeah. And I didn't specifically say it, but I do like the White Sox side as well. It's not like Greinke's any good. The White Sox are cheap. They have 3 hitters in their lineup on DraftKings that are 4K or more. Roberts 4K, Moncada's 45, and Anderson's 4,700. Everybody else is less expensive. Everybody else except for Andrew Benintendi is sub 3K. So really, really cheap offense in a good spot against Greinke. Gavin Sheets at 2,500 I like as a cheap one-off, home run bet.
Super chat from Corey. Thanks, Corey. Is the play to play Ryan and Alcantara or pay down for pitcher and stack the top stacks like Houston? Also, favorite game stack between Baltimore, Toronto, and White Sox and Kansas City. Well, I know we talked a lot about Baltimore and Kansas City being some pretty appealing stacks today. Ryan and Alcantara or pay down for pitcher and go to a top, high price stack is what he's saying.
So I don't really think either way is bad. Ryan Alcantara, I think, are the 2 pitchers I would feel the best about getting to. Still kind of marginal how good I feel, but and then you do have some solid stacks you can still get to. Like, for example, just talking about the White Sox, 4.7 implied run total, and the whole team is free. So there are some good teams you can build that way. But on a slate where pitching is really questionable too, I don't mind the idea of just saying like, all right, I'm going to play the Blue Jays and the Astros, or the Blue Jays and the Rangers, and I'm going to play Suarez and Belak or something. I think they're both pretty good approaches. Those are my 2 favorite game stacks too. From a value standpoint, the White Sox KC one, I guess I have to say, is my favorite because it's just cheaper. But I do like both of those games as a whole a lot.
Okay, I missed that he said game stack. I thought he was just asking between those teams which teams you liked. Cheshire Cat, $10 super chat. Thanks, man. If you got any questions, throw them out there. You're on one today in chat, though. I hope it's moderately appropriate. My God, appreciate you. I'm going to toss this one over to you because we still got 5 games to go. I want to make sure we get everybody in and make sure they're settled with their lineup construction before we do. And as you guys always know, Prize Picks, you're getting a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, $120 value. You're getting 100% deposit match bonus up to $100 when you sign up. So let's say you max it at 100. Even if you don't, 10, whatever, turn that into 20. You're doubling your bankroll out of the gate. But let's say you take 10 or 100, put it in Prize Picks, use the link that we have in the description and chat. You get another 100 there, right? So you already made the 100 back in the bankroll. And you're getting $120 value Stochastic Plus Platinum, every tool for every single sport that we have. You're also getting our premium Discord. Plus, this is something that it's not a depreciating asset, right? This isn't you're just buying something and let it sit around. Oh, it looks nice. No, these are now tools that you have at your disposal to go and win more money doing something that you love, which is playing DFS. You playing something like Prize Picks, which is absolutely blowing up. A lot of ways to make money, and they're doing that. We have all the tools necessary on Prize Picks to make money on top of that too. Josh puts the video out every day for free on the Odd Shopper channel. If you're not at Prize Picks yet, you want a free month of every single tool that we have for every single sport, not just baseball. Click the link, sign up, get your deposit match bonus, 100% up to $100. Get your free month and start winning some money. And if you guys ever have any questions about this, you can hit me up on Twitter at Laffy_D. My DMs are open. Happy to answer questions or solve any issues. All right. Talk to me about Oakland and Houston. I really just want to throw this one over to you with Bielak and Waldichuk. It's clear lopsided matchup. Oakland's plus 225 on the road.
Yeah. Altuve's back for Houston as well, so this lineup gets even deeper. Ken Waldichuk, maybe he'll be good at some point. Hasn't been good to this point since coming over from the Yankees in the Frankie Montas trade. 215 expected ISO to righties this year, 394 to lefties. Very limited sample to lefties. But the reason I mention it is that not that you ever really should, regardless of who the pitcher is. But if you're stacking Houston here, don't give Alvarez and Tucker a second thought just because they're lefty. Just put them in your lineup still. Two of the best hitters in this team on this team, and Waldichuk hasn't been lights out against lefties at all. He's been actively bad. So Houston, top to bottom is going to look pretty good. 1 through 6, you're getting a very deep lineup here. Abreu hasn't hit for power this year really at all, but you have Altuve back, Bregman, Alvarez. Abreu's cheap, Tucker, Pena, and then the bottom of the order is cheap with Julks, Myers, Maldonado. So really, really like Houston. Getting to them as it looks like probably my top stack here. Bielak as a pitcher hasn't been very good in the majors in a limited sample, about a 19.5% strikeout percentage, 5.25 FIP, but that is pretty much what guys that are 8K on the slate do as well. And so at 6,300, or 6,200, I am interested in him. He's also facing Oakland, 3.6 implied run total. Terrible baseball team. So this is one of the guys where if you're paying down for pitching, I think you can just go there. And he's not the best, but he's not any worse than most of the more expensive guys people are going to play.
Dodgers and St. Louis. Also, one quick question on a Houston stack. Just given that, they're not particularly cheap, what do your pitching combinations look like in most of those?
Let me see.
Not specifically, but what are you able to get to?
Yeah, no, I'm just looking to find like what my top Astro stack is and who it has. Okay, so here I have an Astro stack with Abreu, Altuve, Tucker, Julks, and Myers. So not my favorite bats, but that one has Matz and Kikuchi. Maldonado, Abreu, Tucker, Pena, Julks has Perez and Kikuchi. I mean, I think you can kind of do whatever you want because if you go with like Altuve, Bregman, Alvarez, Tucker, Pena, then you're probably going like Bielak and Matz or Bielak and Suarez, something like that. But you can use, like I was just saying, you can use Julks at 2,600, Abreu at 2,700 to balance out some of that and then get to, mid-range guys.
Any interest in hitters or pitchers, from the Dodgers or St. Louis side? Dodgers minus 120, 8.5 total here. Does anything from Tony Gonsolin to Steven Matz stand out to you? Because right now, Matt's getting 3%, Gonsolin getting 2% ownership. Not a whole lot going to either of these guys today.
Yeah, nothing that stands out. You have Steven Matz at a cheap price tag. He's a more talented pitcher than 6,400, but he does have the really tough matchup with the Dodgers. If you're using him as a cheap contrarian option, that's perfectly fine. But, again, I wouldn't be overly confident in it. He's showing up in lineups here and there for me, but nothing too crazy. Looks like he's showing up around like 7% of the time for me. So 3% ownership, I'm getting him 7%. Perfectly fine there. Gonsolin, if he were a little bit cheaper, I'd be interested. He has thrown at least 80 pitches in all 3 of his last starts. And the biggest thing for Gonsolin is that the Dodgers typically don't have a very long leash on him. So him throwing 80 plus pitches is nice, but at 8,900, it's still kind of just, can he really put up enough fantasy points that I really want him outside of like every other pitcher around him failing, which is pretty unlikely. So I'm having trouble getting to him. He is a good pitcher though. It makes me not really want to get to the Cardinals either.
Let's talk any bats. I'm sorry, you just talked about that. I'm trying to space.
No,
this
I didn't. I just talked about pitching, but if you get to the Dodgers, great. It's the Dodgers. They're a really good offense. Only 2 lefties in here, so you have 7 righties going up against Steven Matz, but still a middle of the road team in terms of chances of success.
All right. What do you make of Joe Ryan's price point today? Just looking at this spot against the Angels, Detmer's on the other side. Ryan, $10,300 in this spot. Is that a spot that at 23% ownership you feel pretty good about?
Yeah, he's a good pitcher. He's one of the best pitchers on this slate. So far this year, a 29.7% K percentage, 2.54 FIP. He's only walking 3.5% of hitters. You also get an Angels lineup that does not have Mike Trout. So clearly that is an advantage for Ryan. The only there's 2 negatives here. One is that Shohei Ohtani is insanely good and he still has to face him. The other is that this is a favorable park for hitters. But other than that, when you consider how bad a lot of the pitchers are that we're going to be rostering today, saying that he has to face Shohei Ohtani in a hitter's park is pretty far down the list of things I'm worried about.
All right. Any interest in Detmers?
Yeah, 7,900 again. Hitter's Park, that's not ideal, but good price tag. 3.9 FIP this year, about a 26% strikeout percentage. He's a former highly regarded pitching prospect. Took a little bit of time to figure it out at the major league level, but seems like he's taking some steps forward, at least so far this year. Twins are middle of the road matchup, 4.2 implied run total.
They're striking out at the second highest rate in the league against lefties, though.
Yeah, so I mean that's good. Solano leading off, I don't think strikes out a lot, but then you can certainly get some strikeouts as you go down the order. But yeah, I'm getting around 18% Detmers right now. We have him projected for 18% ownership, so not really taking a stand either way on him.
What about the bats here? You want to get to any of these Minnesota bats?
Not particularly.
What about the Angels?
Nope.
All right. 2 games to go. Hit that. Oh, we crushed 100 likes. Appreciate you guys. Dude, I'd only ask him once. Let me see. We got a super chat here. Yeah, Corey. Thanks, Corey. Best one-off in each of the Toronto, Baltimore, Kansas City game is a 2-1 stat. There's 4 is a 2 games to go in about 7 minutes. Is a 2-1 2x1 stack viable in both games, or try to 5-man it, trying to get both games into a line? Okay. So he's basically asking, what are the best one-offs in these games? If he's going with a 5-man, he's trying to stack it on the other side, I'm assuming, with the other game. I mean, that's the way it sounds.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how to stack 4 teams, if that's what he's saying.
Like, I'm not sure if he's saying he wants to, stack a certain team and then have 1 or 2 from the other side, up from the other teams that he can throw in there in the ones where he's 5-man stacking the other team. I'm not
entirely sure. I'd be 5-man stacking. So like, I wouldn't, there's no way I'm going to have a lineup that has both games. Like I'm not doing like 2-2-2-2 or something like that. But as far as my favorite one-offs from Toronto, Baltimore, I think it's Mountcastle from the Orioles, Guerrero from Toronto. In the other game, Pasquantino from KC, and probably Sheets from the White Sox.
Okay. Let's talk about James Paxton here. So you had the Boston Red Sox, San Diego Padres. James Paxton toeing the rubber for the Red Sox today. And from an ownership perspective, he's coming in at what? And I know that lineup just recently got released. Do you think that ownership comes up from 3.7%?
For Paxton?
Yeah.
Probably not, because nowhere is projecting him very well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
He's the second one. I said earlier there were 2 pitchers that I would really like to be getting to, and I'm not getting a lot of. The first being Bryce Miller. Paxton's the second one. I am getting to him. We haven't projected like 3% ownership. I'm getting like 6%. I have no idea what to make of Paxton, but the reason I'm really interested in him at low ownership and wish I was getting more is that we know what most of the pitchers on this slate are, and it's not very good. Paxton was a very, very, very good pitcher prior to several years of injuries. He made 5 starts in 2020. He made 1 start in 2021. He didn't start at all last year. He struggled with control in his rehab starts. In his first major league start this year against the Cardinals, he was averaging a little bit over 96 miles an hour on his fastball. That's in line with what he was doing back in 2019 when he was really good in those years, prior. We had seen a 4-mile-an-hour drop off in 2020. He's back to his, pre-injury velocity. No idea where he goes from here. No idea how long it is till he gets hurt again. No idea if the walks come back that we saw in the rehab starts. But there's at least some chance that Paxton is just back to being a really good pitcher, and he's unowned at 8,300 on a slate where all the pitching sucks. So yeah. I like the idea of him a lot.
I totally agree with you. This is what I was speaking to earlier, where I was saying there's basically no pitchers that actually have that strikeout upside, even if there's, unknown quantities there. James Paxton made 1 start this year and struck out 45% of the batters he faced.
Yeah, he struck out 9 guys. He also threw 87 pitches.
Yeah. So could he go 95 pitches and maybe he ends up having, I don't know. This is just one of the more interesting spots because like you're saying, there's a lot we don't know. What if he does have it again? If he has it again, you're talking about a guy in James Paxton who for several years was striking guys out at around the 30% clip. right? Like he had a 28 to 30% strikeout rate every year between 2017 and 2020.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just, like you're rostering Martin Perez, you're rostering Anthony DeSclafani, you're rostering these guys where it's like, yeah, they have a good matchup. And for what it's worth, Paxton doesn't. But these guys suck, and that you're just hoping that they're able to beat these bad teams that they're facing. Paxton, like, you could be looking back a month from now and being like, oh my God, I didn't play this guy when he was 3% owned on this slate with no pitching. Now he's 10K striking out 30% of hitters.
Right. Or he gets tuned up and you're like, all right, maybe he's just not great anymore. But I think it's well worth taking some stabs at. Is there anything else you want to do with this game? Because I do want to get to this last spot with Alcantara and DeSclafani, since there's getting a decent amount of ownership there. Snell is on the other side of this one.
Yeah, Snell's getting ownership. Terrifies me. I get it. He's 8,500. He's a good strikeout pitcher. His strikeout stuff is down this year, which concerns me. He's still walking a lot of guys. He's giving up power. Still a 3.6 implied run total for the Red Sox. I'm going to end up getting to Snell. Is what it is. I don't have a lot of confidence in him, but yeah, I do think Paxton, again, like Paxton shouldn't be getting 1/8 the ownership of Snell, though.
Do you have any interest in bats here?
Not particularly.
Okay. Miami and San Francisco. Let's wrap this one up. By the way, if you guys aren't rocking the Stochastic Avatar yet, you're missing out on a shot to get a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum for doing nothing outside of playing DFS that you were already going to do. Go to stochastic.com/avatar. Download it. Use it wherever it is you play. FanDuel, DraftKings, wherever. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. And tweet us at Stochastic HOF. Show us your screenshot. Rocking the avatar. You're getting the free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're finishing, upper 50% in a double up. You still have to win something, but you're getting the free month. And it can be in the nickel, the quarter arcade, dime. Doesn't matter what your entry fee is, as long as it's top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. Rocking that avatar should be the first thing you do when you get onto one of these sites. Make sure you got the Stochastic Avatar to position yourself. So for when you hit, you go, oh shit, wait, I also got a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, and I get inducted into the Hall of Fame. The beautiful segment that you see narrated by this guy between the deeper dive and live before lock. So yeah, get in on it. Stochastic.com/avatar. All right. I don't think this is going to take terribly long to wrap up. Sandy Alcantara and Anthony DeSclafani hit on both sides of this one, man, because this are big talking points for today's slate.
Yeah, pitching game for me. Favorable pitchers park. Pretty much league average in terms of run park factor, but it does the park does a lot to suppress power. DeSclafani 8,700. Not a price tag I like paying for this guy, but he's pretty good at limiting production. Not great at getting strikeouts. Has dealt with a lot of injuries in his career as well, but since the start of 2021, 150 expected ISO to righties, 291 expected WOBA, 22% strikeout percentage. Lefties have a 331 expected WOBA, 20.5% strikeout percentage. No Jazz Chisholm for the Marlins makes this lineup weaker as well. So he looks pretty good. And then Alcantara, one of the actual best pitchers on the slate in terms of talent. He's had some struggles this year, but still a 3.65 FIP, still striking out about 23% of hitters. The Marlins have a very long leash on him. They'll let him, go deep into games. He is one of the only pitchers in Major League Baseball that you can actually reasonably expect complete games out of him. So both pitchers look good. I don't have any interest in the bats.
All right. Final thoughts, favorite pitchers, favorite or top 3 pitchers. And this could be from a tournament perspective, right? Like you can throw Paxton into the mix if you want. And then top 3 stacks.
So top 3 pitchers, probably Ryan. Actually, so with what I have right now on DraftKings, it would be Detmers, Snell, and Ryan. I really wish it wasn't Snell. I really like the Paxton play. I'm apparently not making it, but I do really like it. As far as top stacks go, looks like White Sox, KC, Houston.
All right. And I know you said there's some interest in Baltimore there as well for anyone putting.
Yeah, and Toronto.
In Toronto, putting some finishing touches on their lineups. Appreciate you guys hanging out as always. Follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS, me Alafi_D. Shout out to Jordan Klein for producing this one. Jordan, we got NBA Live Before Lock coming up in 30 minutes, right? All right, Greg Ehrenberg, Neil Orfield. Be sure to stick around for that. Less than 30 minutes right here on the Stochastic YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys. Take it easy.